Welcome back, welcome back. After almost 2 years under a military-backed interim government, Bangladesh returned to democracy last month. Some good news at last from somewhere in the world. With a new Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, who served as Prime Minister back in the 1990s, she swept to an overwhelming majority over her bitter political rival, Khalida Zia. Sheikh Hasina's party, the Awami League, took more than 2/3 of the seats, giving her what's been referred to as a supermajority in Parliament, although she still faces charges of extortion that have to be answered, and she was detained for those for a year in a form of custody. And the country, the world's 7th most populous, remains stricken by poverty, corruption and violence. I spoke to her earlier and I asked her if the scale of that landslide victory had surprised her.
Not exactly, because I expected that this time, of course, people will give us victory and their verdict. But well, the number, I couldn't guess that much, but I expected something like 220 or 21, something like that.
And it was a tremendous victory for you over your long-time rival, Khalida Zia, who said that she would like to work with you. Can you see her having any part to play in your government, or is the rivalry go back too far?
As you know that in the parliamentary system, opposition is always a part of the government. So the Treasury bench and opposition bench, they always work together. And I hope that they will take oath very quickly and come back to power and join in the parliament, and that will give them a good chance to play a good role in our government.
And are you able to say what you feel will be your priorities during this administration? I mean, obviously Bangladesh has got a lot of problems: Islamic militancy, corruption, and of course extreme poverty in parts of the country. What will be your big priority?
Well, the first thing, to reduce the price hike, bring it up to the purchasing power of our people, to reduce the inflation rate, and control the law and order situation. And against the terrorism, it's a big problem in our country. Already I made a proposal that my proposal is that Bangladesh and South Asian country, if we form a joint task force to control these terrorist activities, I think that will be very big job. And already I made this proposal, and in our election manifesto we mention it, and I will take initiative. I'll talk to other country to join hand with us to form a joint task force to combat the terrorism. So, well, the terrorism is a big problem, not only our country, also different country, and that always cause sufferings for the common people. We want peace, and I want to establish Bangladesh as a peaceful country in South Asia.
Now, one of the amazing things, of course, Sheikh Hasina, is that you won this election with a number of corruption charges still hanging over you, which I gather have been sort of frozen. These charges of corruption, who will decide what happens regarding them? Will it be your decision as Prime Minister?
Of course not. How can I take decision why I should? And as you know that the first corruption charge they filed against me, after hearing that, I tried to come back to Bangladesh to face the trial, At that moment, the then government, I mean the Qatar government, tried to stop me. So that proved that all those cases are all fraud. But of course, law will take its own course.
The law will take its own course. And tell me, what about the relationship? Yes, sorry, after you.
I don't want to interfere in judiciary. Judiciary is separated and judiciary will function independently.
That's very clear, that's very clear. Tell me about relations with India. How important is it to improve relationships with India? There are accusations that go back and forth. Do you think that you can have a closer relationship with India?
Frankly speaking, what I believe that with neighboring country, whether it is Pakistan, India, or Nepal, Bhutan, or Myanmar, any country, through discussion we can solve them, and I believe that we should solve all of them. And our foreign policy is very clear. Our foreign policy is friendship to all, malice to none. So we want a friendly relationship because our main enemy is poverty. And South Asia, you know, the people are suffering from poverty. So how to solve this problem? How to give and ensure a better life for our people? That should be our priority. We should not fight each other. We should work together to solve this problem, to ensure people a peaceful, better, prosperous life. So economic emancipation is our goal.
And behind you, as you speak to us now, on the screen behind you is a picture of your dear father. I imagine that he would be very, very proud of you today and your victory.
Yes, of course. Just today I visited all our family members and some of our ministers and MPs. We visited the mausoleum of my father, and I have to fulfill his unfinished job. That is my first priority. He loved his people, as you know. He wanted to work for people, wanted to ensure people a better life, good life. So, yes, this is my job. I am here just to serve my nation, serve my people, the people whom my father loved so much. He sacrificed his life for them.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Hasina, for joining us today.
Thank you very much on behalf of my party, my people. I thank you very much, and also on behalf of my family. I thank you. It is nice to talking to you.
From the new Bangladesh Prime Minister to America's new president, Barack Obama's inauguration is less than a week away, and high expectations will come with it. But the new president will face a series of challenges that will demand urgent attention. The war on Gaza, of course, an Iraq that could still unravel, and the increasing threat from Iran. So is the clock working for or against the new president? How can the new administration work differently from the current one? Joining me now from New York is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haas. Richard, what do you think is the most important of the various problems, or the most demanding of the problems that the president will have from Tuesday in foreign affairs?
One way to think about it is the set of problems in the greater Middle East. It's almost hard to choose among them, but there's everything from Iran's nuclear programs to the uncertainty about what will happen if and when the United States draws down its presence in Iraq, and perhaps most pressing at all, or most complicated at all, will be what to do about Afghanistan and Pakistan, which are increasingly one and the same conflict.
All of those ones, yes. And that's quite apart from the current issue, obviously, the current tragic issue of Gaza as well. But there's been a lot of talk from Tehran in the last 2 or 3 days. Do you think a dialogue will begin between the United States or its allies and on behalf of the United States with Iran? Do you think there will be dialogue?
I do, so long as Iran is willing to do it. Essentially, the United States has worked through the European allies over the last few years. This administration, the Obama administration, will be ready to conduct the dialogue directly. I believe Iran will as well. Much harder to predict is whether there'll be any progress. The optimists would say the lower oil prices have increased Iran's readiness to perhaps negotiate in good faith. Others, however, point to domestic politics there, point to the nationalism and support for the nuclear program, its commitments to groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, and quite honestly are profoundly skeptical. But we'll know soon enough.
And at the same time, Afghanistan could see a change of direction, or do you think it will be just more troops going into Afghanistan, or a change of direction?
That'll be part of it. As troops gradually come down in Iraq, they will ramp up in Afghanistan. But nobody thinks that troop increase alone will solve things. The problem is that Afghanistan, no one is exactly sure what will solve things, given the corruption, the weakness of the central government, the drug trade, the resurgence of the Taliban, and the reality that Pakistan is an effective sanctuary for the Taliban. So I think what you will see is a comprehensive U.S. approach to increase troops in Afghanistan, yes, to accelerate the training of Afghan police and armed forces, but also to try to reduce the role that Pakistan has been playing as a sanctuary. And there's an open question there whether the Pakistani government will be a willing and able partner of the United States and others in that effort.
Actually, we hear a lot of rumors about the fact that you may well become a special envoy for the Obama administration in the Middle East. Is there any truth in that, beyond your delightful smile there?
Thank you very much. The short and truthful answer is I have no idea. I've seen the reports, and all I can tell you is that while they're all terribly flattering, there's been no formal approach, no authorized approach. So at the moment, there's some smoke, but there's absolutely no fire.
If you had to sum up in terms of the approach of the Obama administration to foreign policy, how would you say it's going to differ in that overall sense from the Bush approach, the George W. Bush approach?
Well, it certainly inherits a far more challenging world than Mr. Bush inherited some 8 years ago. My sense is you will see a greater emphasis on diplomacy. You'll see a greater emphasis on working with others, on so-called multilateralism. I believe you'll see slightly less inclination to rely on, as heavily as Mr. Bush did, on military force. I also think the Obama administration will be more comfortable working with allies, working with international organizations, may place slightly less emphasis on trying to change the internal nature of other societies, a little bit less emphasis on the so-called democracy transformation. But let me just make one last point, David. I think you will see a profound contrast between where Mr. Bush began 8 years ago and Mr. Obama, but probably less of a contrast, and indeed significant continuity between where Mr. Bush ended up and where Mr. Obama will likely begin.
Do you share a feeling that the summing up by the British Foreign Secretary David Miliband about the fact that the war on terror had been misconceived and possibly counterproductive, that you can't kill your way to peace and to get rid of terror? Do you think that's a thought that will resound within the Obama administration?
I do, and I think there's widespread acceptance of what the Foreign Secretary said. You can use force to deal with people who have already made the career choice, if you will, to act as terrorists, but that won't help you in trying to discourage young men and women from going down that path. And the real challenge, it seems to me, is how does one influence what is said in mosques? How does one influence what is taught in schools? How does one influence the culture within a society so young men and women will not attack innocence in the name of any political cause? And we can't shoot or kill our way to that achievement. That's something that really has to happen within society. To paraphrase Sam Huntington, who only just recently died, in order to avoid the clash between civilizations, we really need something of a clash within a civilization. And I believe within the Arab and Muslim worlds, we need to see much more of an internal debate about what is legitimate and what is not, and hopefully more tolerant, reasonable, moderate voices will come out on top.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. Here's to the next time. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's it for this week, in fact. Next week, as President Obama takes office, of course, we'll be asking how the world sees the new man in the Oval Office, and much more besides. Join us then in 7 days' time.